Hello and welcome you all to my YouTube channel, The Web World. I am Ankur Dubey, an experienced web developer. In our last video, we have talked about how you can launch your first Angular application. In today's video, we are going to talk about how you can implement Angular routing in your project. We all know that before developing any city, we need to think about how people of that city can navigate from one place to another place. In the same way, before creating any Angular project or before developing any Angular project, we need to think about how we can navigate from one component to another component. As we all know that there are so many components in any Angular application, and none of the Angular application can be complete without Angular routing. So this concept is very important in your project. So you all know that why Angular routing is so important. So let's talk about it, and I have divided all steps in 5 parts. You need to know all the steps of implementing Angular routing. I will give one overview of those steps. We're going to know in practical as well. So let's talk about first step. Select routing option while creating a project. As in last video I have told and I have shown you, before creating any project, we need to know about ng new Angular project name. Then in CLI, Angular asks you, do you want to implement routing in your project? So you need to select yes. If you select yes, then it creates Angular routing module automatically in your project. In second step, we need to create components which you want to add. Like any Angular application has so many components. So we will create components. In our example, we'll take two components. One is home component and second is about us component. And we will learn how to navigate between both components. In third step, add those components in your routing module. As I have told you, Angular will automatically create Angular routing module for your application. By default, it creates one routing module file. So we need to add first those components which we are going to navigate. Like there are 4 components in your project: header, footer, home component, about us component. So we just want to navigate from home to about us. Header and footer component should remain same for all the components. So we will add home component and about us component in routing module. In fourth step, we need to add router outlet. Like we need to tell Angular at what place we are going to switch those components. Suppose, as I have told you, header and footer should be static in your whole Angular project. At what area we are going to change components? At middle part of your page, where first time we will show home component and next time we will show about us component. So this area we need to give one component or tag directive for that, which is router outlet directive. So this way, by giving or by adding router outlet directive, will tell Angular that in this part we are going to navigate. All other parts should remain same. In fifth and last step, we are going to add buttons in your header and assign router link. Before we can navigate from one component to another component through link, like if we'll write /home, that then after implementing that routing, Angular will switch us to home component. If we'll write in the URL /about us, then Angular will take us to about us component. But we cannot, or user is not going to change through URL. So we need to add some buttons like in our menu. So after clicking on those buttons, user can navigate from different components. So guys, those 5 are the steps which you need to know before working on Angular routing. But now this is the time that there are 3 important syntaxes which you should know before jumping to the practical example. Let's talk about those syntaxes. First syntax is router outlet directive. As I have told you, this is the area where we are going to navigate. Second part is routes array, where we can give the path and component in objects. So here in this route, we will define path, like here we are telling the Angular, if we will write home path in our URL, then it should load home component. In the same way, if we'll write /about in our URL, then it should load about us component. So this syntax is very important. You should note somewhere it. The third part is router link. Here, after adding button, we need to give router link to those button, where we tell the path. On clicking home anchor tag or home button, user will navigate to /home URL, and we already know that if we'll write /home URL path in our URL, then Angular will load home component. So guys, now let's jump to the practical example where I will show you how we can implement these things through my machine. So guys, in our last example, we have learned about how to launch our first Angular application. In that, we learned how to create sample application. We have created this application where we are showing our first heading. This is my first project, which I have given in app component.html. So today we are going to add routing in our old project. So we'll continue from where we have left it. So first we need to create 2 components. So let me first create home component. Here we use command ng-gc, G for generate, C for component. Here you can see one component is created, which is home component. Now we need to add another component. So let's generate one more component. We can give it name about us. So here you will see that one more folder will be added, about us. So we have created 2 components, home component and about us component. Now, as I've told you, we need to tell Angular, are we going to add routing in our project? I have selected yes at the time of creating my project. So Angular has added by default one routing module to my project. So this is my app routing module. Here I need to tell Angular which are the components which I am going to use for routing. As we have created two components, home and about us, so we are going to add those components in our routing. First we need to import those components. So let me import home first. What class name I have given? So I will get that class name from home component.ts, which I will give in import statement from. I'm going to add it from home/home component. So I have added home component. Now I need to import about us component as well. Now we need to give path and we need to tell Angular on which URL which component we are going to load. So here in path we will tell Angular if user will write home, then should load component home component, and these parameters should be given as an object. Okay, so I have tell Angular that on giving home URL it should load home component. In the same way, if we are going to write about, then it should load about us component. Now I'll serve my Angular application and we will see if it's working or not. Well, it will not work, but I'll tell you reason why it will not work. So let's see if it's working or not. Let's write home. Nothing is happening. My page is looking same like it was looking before because we did not define at what area that home component should load. And as I have told earlier that we can tell Angular through outer router outlet directive. Now let's check if it's it's loading home component. In home component, whenever you create a component, by default this tag is added homeworks. Same in about us HTML, we have added one tag about us works. So you are able to see homeworks. This means if I write home URL, then home component is loaded. Now let's write about path, because in my project, in my routing module, I have defined if I'll write about path, then about us component should be loaded. So let's see. Okay, about us works, miss about us component is loading. So this was the first phase of our practical. Like we are able to change or navigate through components through URL, but user cannot change URL. Means it will be not user friendly to changing component through URL. So we will give two buttons here. Suppose home, and about. So I have added two buttons, home and about. What I want here, on clicking home, we should navigate to home component. On clicking about, we should navigate to about component. So the third syntax which I told you to just note down, because we are going to use that third syntax. Router link. Now we are telling Angular that on clicking home, we should navigate to home path, and on clicking about, we should navigate to about path. Now let's see if it's working or not. Right now I'm in about path. If I click home, then home component is loading. If I click about, then about component is loading. So that is what a routing does. Now let's say on default URL, you can see on default URL none of the component is loaded, because we have defined home component path on home path only. So now I want by default home component should be loaded here in our page. So for that we will update our routing app routing module. Now let's see what we will update. We will create one more object. Here we will tell first path. I'll left it blank so that if none of the route or none of the path is given in our Angular project, then we should redirect to. We should redirect to home path with. Now let's see if it's working or not. So in my project is not loading, and I think some error is giving. Okay, please provide path match, because by default when we are going to do like that, we need to give path match as well, which will give full. Now it should work. Okay, yes, it's working. So by default when I load my application, then by default the navigation is going to home path. So it's loading home component by default, which we want, and on clicking, components are switching. Thank you so much guys for watching full video. This was just the basic features of routing. If you want to know more about it, if you want to know advanced features of routing like lazy loading, how we can implement nested routing, then please like, share and subscribe my channel. If you have any concern or you want to suggest anything, then you can comment me or you can send a mail to my email ID. We'll meet again in new video with new concept of web world.